Okay, everybody, we are starting our next session. So I would kindly ask that you wrap up your conversations and take a seat. Just before we begin, again, I want to repeat that we have simultaneous translation available. So if you want to listen to the session in French or in Spanish, then you can join using the Zoom link that was sent via Eventbrite to your email. And if you use your mobile phone and a headset, you'll be able to listen in French and Spanish. Can anybody here explain what I just said in French or Spanish? Use, or Sasha's coming, it's good. Thank you. Yes, it's fine. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I hope I do justice. Anyway, what I heard was your headset, right?
Yeah,
The simultaneous.
headset, and they will have got a link in their email.
Ok.
Sorry.
Ok. Bonsoir, bonsoir tout le monde. Vous avez déjà reçu le mail. Il y a le lien sur le mail. Vous pouvez utiliser votre portable avec votre écouteur. Il y a la traduction. J'espère que c'est tout, n'est-ce pas? Merci. Oh, en espagnol.
Bueno, que a los correos les han mandado el enlace para poder escuchar la sesión traducida al español con los audífonos, bueno, enchufados al teléfono.
Super. Okay, well, actually, that was sort of a great introduction for what we will be doing for the next hour and a half. So, very welcome to the Feminist Fishbowl, a feminist future beyond the Pact. And what we will be doing today is really engaging in an interactive discussion with all of you. So, we won't have a standard panel. You're all the panelists. And we'll have a couple of speakers that we'll have on the stage at first, and they will rotate with each and every one of I want to welcome you all on behalf of all of the co-organizers, so FEIM and NGO CSW LAC, Women Engage for a Common Future, Women Environmental Program Nigeria, the Gender Youth Caucus, and Feminist. And what we will be doing here today is outlining what feminists want to see happen beyond the pact. So we will be discussing a lot of the different processes that are coming up. Not all of them, it's too many, but we're getting quite close, quite an ambitious program. So I'll kindly ask you to go to the next slide. You see here one of the many issues that we as NGOs encounter. We have a lot of abbreviations and acronyms for everything, and it can be quite confusing. And as was mentioned earlier in another panel discussion, they can make people not feel included in the conversation. It's super hard to follow. A lot of people don't know what these things stand for. And so in order to democratize that process a little bit, we have a great, I want to say one pager, but it's 5 of them that you can see on the next slides. So this is a briefing note that contains policy processes that are linked to gender, climate, and the Summit of the Future. So we actually wrote this one for another event, but it comes in handy for this one as well. So I highly recommend just scanning it, having a look, and if at any point during this conversation you hear about an abbreviation, or you want to know more, or you want to know what the link is with gender equality or climate, feel free to go to this page, have a little look, or even better, just come ask our panelists. So now, what is a fishbowl? Has any of you heard or done a fishbowl before? I see. Ooh, only a couple of hands. Well, that's great, because actually we will do a little test round with what I will say is one of the easier topics that we'll discuss here today, but definitely also one of the most divisive topics out there. So I'll ask you to go to the next slide. Cats or dogs? I know this is really gonna, put a wrench between what a lot of people feel. Are you a cat person? Are you a dog person? So what I'm gonna ask of you is simply to look at these beautiful cats and dogs and tell me which number, which dog, which cat you resonate most with today. How are you feeling? Does anybody already have a cat or dog in mind? Yes. Cat number 2. Okay, well, actually, to practice our fishbowl, I'll ask you to come have a seat here. Great. Anybody else that has a very particular cat or dog in mind? Or maybe the same one? Can also be. Don't be shy. This is only a practice round. Come up front. You're 4. 4 cats. Please have a seat. Yes, I see a hand in the back. Oh, or were you touching your hair? Another cat person, please come to the stage. And I'll ask, anybody here resonate with one of the dogs? One of the dogs? Yes. Come to the stage. All right. Please have a seat. So, I haven't heard from you yet. What's kind of number 2? You can press the button on the bottom for a longer time until it turns green. Yes.
Hello.
What kind of cat or dog do you feel like today?
Number 2. That cat, that dog. Yeah. Not that cat. Yeah.
How come?
How come? I've had dogs all my life, and I think that dog has a lot of life and a lot of energy. Looks like the others seem to be sleeping or sad, or so. Yeah.
Great, great. One of our cat people here, I feel like they're in the majority in this discussion. What makes you pick cats over dogs? Maybe I'll ask it to you right there. Yes.
To be very honest, I think I'd like to say that I'm more of an animal person, irrespective of cats or dogs. But I just picked one which I resonated with the most. But I also think that cat in particular, because it's just like that's been me since the morning stat coffee, just like trying to get through my day, attend all my meetings and my events, and but also like determined and focused, and like we're here to have our agenda heard and our voices heard. So that's why I resonated with that one.
It's a lot of interpretation for that cat. I love it. Please give the microphone. Yes.
No, I didn't choose a cat over a dog, but the expression of number 4 cat I liked. It's yawning and little sleepy. So I thought I'm also somebody like that, getting a little tired of this international processes. All I, I got into these international processes in 2015. And I witnessed the adoption of Agenda 2030 in General Assembly. That was my first time in General Assembly, and I was very excited to get into that. I literally landed and rushed to get my ticket, lest I'll miss it. And I had a lot of hope. We definitely will have a sustainable world, and we are doing great as international communities. 9 years down the line, I should say I'm unhappy. I'm not happy, but I cannot also do without it. I don't know, probably at the moment. So I'm a little sleepy, yawning. Okay, I'm not there.
So maybe you can go from cat number 4 to after the session, maybe cat number 2, some new motivation, looking very focused, right?
After this 2 days, I would be thinking in that line. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some more hope has come.
Our final speaker that has joined us, maybe you can pass it down the microphone. Super.
I don't have such a long backstory by choosing my cat. It just seemed that this cat number 1 is enjoying the moment, and I was also enjoying being here. And I also do have my sunglasses with me.
Fantastic.
No, it's just great to see that I'm in a room full of people who want to have a positive impact, and this is why I enjoy being with so ambitious people that are having a goal and are trying to connect for reaching these goals. And this is why I chose cat number 1. Maybe cat number 1 thinks something completely different, but this is what my interpretation was. So yeah.
Thank you so much. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being so brave for talking about cats and dogs. So give them a big hands. Thank you. Please have a seat. Thank you. So I know this exercise might seem a bit silly, but I wanted to do this to first get the energy going in the room a bit, and also to show you that it's not scary to come up here. I won't bite, unlike maybe cat number 2, which looks a bit silly. But I will want to ask of you to please come join the conversation that we're having here today. We're going to be discussing quite a few of the different processes and giving our feminist analysis on them, and also looking at what is in the Pact for the Future and what can we build on for these upcoming processes. The first 2 that we will be discussing is the upcoming Beijing +30 and ICPD +30. And for that, I will invite our first set speaker, right? Mabel Bianco, president and founder of FEIM. Give her hands. Yes. And so even though it might seem weird or rude, you can just come up here. If you feel like I have something to say or I ask Mabel a question, just come up here, have a seat, feel very welcome. And when you've said what you wanted to say, just leave again. So this is really an open space. For the next 20 minutes, this entire floor is yours. And I hope to be talking a lot less than I do now. That's the goal. So first up, Mabel. Yes, you've been following these processes for quite some time. And I would love to ask you foremost, what has come out for the Pact for the Future in terms of the topics of gender equality, SRHR?
Well, first of all, we need to say that at least the pact include the words, something. But it's only that. That's a problem. Because traditionally, previously, we used to participate. In this time, we are not going to participate. They don't allow us. This is something intergovernmental, but not with the civil society, not with us. And traditionally, I've been, I must recognize here, how old am I? Because I've been in Nairobi in 1985. That's why I'm saying I let you know how old am
I was born.
And really, we participate. We were able to participate. And in Cairo, all the process for Cairo, we fight, we make many noise, we not agree with the government and with the final text in many issues, but we could participate. We have the opportunity. Later on, after Cairo, came Beijing, and Beijing was really, for those that know, Beijing was the 4th conference on women, and this 4th conference on women, it was so important, and we have there so much voice. Of course, they tried to put us aside, no? They put us and invite the civil society to be in Wairu, 30 kilometers outside Beijing. But we were there and we come there, so we were in both sides. And we let us know, and we are so happy because at the last minute, we also, what we didn't include in Cairo, that were sexual rights, they were included in Beijing. So we celebrate so much because it was there and we could have the sexual rights, put it there at the last minute, but it was. But this was not in a passive way. What we think here, all the process was completely passive for us. We need to look, listen, and they open sometimes for these, how they call, they open these sessions, the town halls. But the town halls, we were all of us saying to these 2 persons only what we want and listen among ourselves. Sometimes it's a government there, but this is not a real conversation in between governments and ourselves. And I think this is what we need to really claim. Why? Because this is, have you seen what they draw in the floor at the entrance? This is the people's card. And you remember the card of the creation of the UN is the peoples. And the peoples are we. They are not the governments. The government pass, but we remain. And we are the people. That's why we need to say, sorry, you are wrong. You have no the people here. You need to look at that, at the chart, and remember what were that. And I would say that I and some others from my country, I'm from Argentina, and you can imagine how we feel that also our government yesterday say they are not going to be in the pact. So they abandon the Agenda 2030, they abandon the pact, they abandon everything that takes care of human rights. If it's women, if it's children, whatever it is. So I need to come back again because in Cairo, we have also a government in that moment that rejected the reproductive rights. But finally, we win that they were there. They make reservations, but later on, another government retired the reservations. Now we need to work how we are going to recover, how we. And this is that we need, and I invite all of you, I hope you are not in such a bad country as am I now, but that we need to work hard at country level to push to have our voice there, to push that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that reflection on from Cairo to Beijing. That's really interesting history also to learn from here, because we see a lot of backlash also on which that is for a long time. We see that terms like gender equality are all of a sudden becoming quite contested, which is a huge backslide, of course. Is there anybody in the room that would like to join us who has, for example, followed any of the Commission on Status of Women conferences before, or has perhaps also been there at a Beijing review? Maybe just a show of hands if any of you have. Oh, super. I see your familiar faces. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, another older woman. Hi,
Great.
it's Catherine Klein, and I do help represent older persons. And as Mabel knows, it has been a tremendous fight to get older women on the agenda at every CSW in March. So my question is, why? All of you, I hope, aspire to get older. And I think you need a world that's going to be more compatible with our values. And yet we are invisible. If you look at the Pact, I think there's one reference to older persons, and that's only in conjunction with younger ones. Younger people are going to get older too. That's great. So my question is, what do we need to do? If we can't get UN women to include older women, how in the world are we going to get some of these other countries to do so?
Well, I only must say that they are talking a lot about young people and young women, but it's more tokenist that real participation of the young people. So we are completely put aside, but they are invited to be, and really is only to say they are, and they put everywhere. And I know they are trying to do it, but I don't know how you feel on that. Are you feel involved in that?
I feel like you're the perfect person to respond to this question. So very thankful that you're joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the whole reason I want to come up here is to also fully acknowledge what both of you are saying. And I think that's the beauty and that's the power of having not just youth-led processes, but intergenerational processes. And that's when we truly are feeling that we're being included collectively, and co-creation is actually happening, not just for the sake of it, and that we're not feeling tokenized every time we're called into these spaces, every time we're here to, have a young person checked off on the checklist. But we're really here to learn from our previous generations. We're here to impact future generations, but also work on the present, not because we are the present, but because we're all people, like you said. We are the people. And we need to work intergenerationally. We need to learn from you, and you need to hear from us, and we need to hear from you. And that is I think that is the essence of having a multi-stakeholder but more intergenerational process. And I think that fully agree, by the way, that the Pact has so much implementation that can be done, so much potential for implementation that can be done. But as someone who's been following up on it since like the past many months, I think something that's different about the Pact this time is that there is a very strong focus on having intergenerational impact. However, we will only know about whether our governments and member states are championing that after we start implementation, after we see accountability, after they give us an accountability framework and let us lead those framework. And by us, I don't mean young people, I mean all of us. Because again, you have been in the spaces, you've been involved, you've worked, and when you were saying 1985, I was born in 2006. I haven't even that is so powerful because you've seen those struggles. You've been in these spaces that now we're here in. And now when we're here for we're asking leaders to give young people a voice, I think we're really echoing the whole fact that give unheard voices a space to come and speak, and not just speak, but give us a space to sustain our movements and to stay involved with processes that are already happening. So yeah, that's just like a little bit I wanted to add, but yeah.
Example.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to give an example because it can get depressing. I know, having fought for decades for things. But there's an example. The World Health Organization last week had a panel announcing a pre-launch of an intergenerational approach to health. And finally, they're recognizing, guess what? The woman who's get pregnant needs to have a proper environment so that the baby then is healthy. That child does or doesn't have an impact of what that woman's environment was like. It then translates to when you're an adolescent to older age. So they're starting to look and to help countries redevelop and redefine how their health programs should be intergenerational across the life course. And I think that's a big achievement, although we all knew that's the right approach.
Yes, very welcome to our circle. Please
Thanks so
introduce
much,
yourself.
Yeah, for making this an inclusive discussion. My name is Jasmine. I think I probably represent a generation in the middle between between the two of you. I'm 29. I was away from the UN for the past 10 years, but I was here in 2015 as a youth delegate, an official youth delegate. So I helped negotiate the agenda. But then I took a break. I've been away for 10 years and now I'm returning. I've always been a very, very, strong, committed feminist. But what I'm wondering, and it just, I haven't been involved in those negotiations recently. But what I'm wondering is whether the feminist civil society in my generation, maybe also in your generation, whether it's actually breaking away a little bit, because I think feminism has changed. 10 years ago, feminism was different, and I think in your generation, feminism was so different to what your generation defines as feminism today. And I sometimes call it the Instagram or TikTok feminism, where it's so easy to put that hashtag. But then I meet so many young people, also from my generation, but even more from your generation, who refer back to those very traditional values, who say things like, well, maybe, we are just so different. And, maybe my man is just better in leading, working, and I'm just better staying at home. And that's okay if that's the life decision. But I perceive to be, especially post the pandemic, I perceive a huge backlash in public discourse. And I think I just want to bring that to discussion. And I was curious and interesting to hear how this impacts your work, at your base, like your constituencies, the people you represent here at the UN, and if you feel that as well.
Thank you for the question. Anybody wants to pick that up? Or anybody else that's... Perfect. Great. Yes, please be welcome. Thank you. And thank you all for joining for this first round. Give them a hand, please, because that's really brave. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, I'm a little bit younger than Mabel, but a little bit older than the rest of you. Right. I was also at the Beijing 30 years ago at the Beijing Fourth Conference on Women, and I must say we had so much hope, and we saw progress. You know, in my youth, I had access to free and legal abortion. I had access to all the sexual and reproductive health and rights, and now I see that in so many countries this is being rolled back. Yeah, so we have a huge backlash. And therefore, we have to really stand up and make sure that we go and get funding for the feminist movements, which are intersectional, which are really decolonial, and which we bring it also back to our local communities, and that it's not longer only here at some high-level meetings that we talk about Beijing. So I hope we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Moi, je suis Aminata Touré, je viens du Mali, en Afrique, et je suis du GCAP Mali. Et je peux dire que je suis aussi personne âgée parce que j'ai 69 ans. Donc, j'ai commencé le mouvement féminin depuis...
D'accord. Donc,
oui, Aminata Touré.
Aminata Touré is from Mali, and she also identifies as a slightly older woman with 69 years of age. Yes.
D'accord. Donc, j'ai commencé dans le mouvement féminin depuis 77. Et ce n'était pas facile en ce temps. Et d'abord, les hommes ne donnaient pas la place aux femmes.
So I started feminist mobilizing in 1977, and it was really not easy because the men didn't want to give up their spaces.
Donc, à partir de 95 avec Beijing, les États sont engagés à donner la place aux femmes. Mais ce n'était pas encore facile.
And so thanks to the Beijing conference, we started to be able to get spaces for women, but it was still not easy.
Mais aujourd'hui, je reconnais que dans beaucoup de pays, il y a des textes qui favorisent la femme. Mais l'application, c'est un autre problème.
And even though we now have better legislation in the texts for women's equal rights, we're still not seeing enough implementation of that.
Donc, je dis que les jeunes, ils ont beaucoup plus de chances que nous. On s'est battu non seulement dans la famille, ce n'était pas facile de sortir parce que les cultures ne donnent pas l'occasion aux femmes d'être devant tout le temps, mais aussi les hommes intellectuels aussi ne veulent pas donner la place aux femmes parce que les femmes n'ont pas beaucoup de capacité de formation. Donc, on nous met toujours au second rang.
And so that's, I see for the young, they have an opportunity because we have been fighting very hard also within our families to try and get the spaces from, which we often see are being resisted by our men. Yeah.
Mais comme Antonio l'a dit à l'ouverture avec le forum des jeunes, la place, on ne donne pas, ça se prend.
So Antonio Gutierrez said at the opening of the forum, these spaces are not given, these spaces, we have to take them.
Yes. Il y a les opportunités, mais tant que tu ne te bats pas, tu ne peux pas t'en servir. Donc aujourd'hui, on a l'accès pour la participation. C'est dans tous les textes, il faut participer, il faut inclure, il faut l'inclusion des femmes et des filles. Mais le problème, c'est quoi? Et la capacité pour certains, ça existe encore. Les formations, il en manque. Ensuite, le pouvoir économique aussi n'est pas là. Donc, une femme qui n'a pas, surtout les jeunes aujourd'hui, qui sont plus nombreuses et qui n'ont pas d'emploi, comment elles vont participer? Quand il y a les votes, si tu n'as pas d'argent, tu ne peux pas faire ta campagne. Chez vous, on fait des collectes. Chez nous, non, c'est toi qui enlèves de ta poche ou bien tu vas prendre un crédit. Donc, ce n'est pas facile.
So we are talking about women's equal participation in policy and decision-making in our laws, but we see in practice, it's really, we have a barrier, an economic barrier also, because it's not like here in this country where there's fundraising for campaigns. We have to pay our campaigns to participate in policy processes from our own pockets.
Donc, au niveau des votes, les femmes participent, c'est elles qui mobilisent. Bon, au niveau des mairies, c'est-à-dire les municipalités, il y a quelques femmes qui sont là, mais il n'y a pas beaucoup plus de 8 femmes maires sur 703 communes.
We only
Par
have
exemple.
8 mayors in 700, more than 700 municipalities.
Donc, nous, les femmes et les jeunes filles, il faut qu'on essaie de changer pour avoir beaucoup plus de capacités. Pas seulement les capacités où on va à l'école, mais il y a les stratégies qu'on peut transmettre. Comment nous avons fait pour être là aujourd'hui?
So we need to transmit these strategies, work together with the young women to take these spaces. Thank you very much.
Donc, je continue.
Well, thank you. I'm Pamela Ogando from GCAP LAC, and I'm coming from Dominican Republic. And I work for a feminist NGO in the country, and I want to address something that was brought here later. I'm 35 years old, since we're talking about ages. It's really hard for us to work in this type of environment. We have been seeing in Latin America and the Caribbean region a setback in terms of women's right. In Dominican Republic, we still do not have access to abortion, even under the 3 causes. So we have seen women dying because even when the baby's life is not viable, and it's insane in this type of situations. And we continue with the discourse that we are advancing on women's right and children's right, and it's people are getting, especially women in my country, are getting a little bit disappointed of continue with the fighting. It's really hard to be a feminist in a country where we have a conservative government, where the church it's really involved in education. I think one minister of one director of education was recently fired because he was launching a class on gender equality, and a program was shut down because one of the teachers said, men and women are not born, are made. And it's like a philosophical question, and the program was shut down because of that. So it's really hard. And I used to work for UN Women, and it's so hard when then you go back to the ground and you see like, oh, this is lovely in paper. What I was doing was amazing, I thought. And then I went to Dominican Republic and I saw the reality, and it's really disheartening. And I wonder how Beijing plus 30 can actually be like a really revolutionary for countries like ours, where we have seen definitely a setbacks in women's and young girls' rights. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story.
Hi. Well, I just want to thank you so much for this session. I think really this session reaffirmed in my feminism and why I've been working with feminists for so many years, the power that those kind of methodologies have, because that's really what is transforming, how we can it's the first time in all this time, the time I've been here, that I think there is an event that is really inclusive, that we could translate for our friend that all the time has been struggling, and we just did like this, and that's how feminists will work. So first of all, I wanted to say that, and I feel really like so joyful, so happy about that. And also thank the little men that have stayed in the session, because it's like they're just afraid. We think there is this feminist session and everybody leaves, and it's just like so great that some men are here, and to say that what feminists are doing is working in this circle way, pushing for joint agenda, even though we are so different. In Mexico, we have like, I don't know, 40, 50 kinds of feminism. There is not just one feminism, but what joins us is our clarity towards where we are going. And so just getting back to the subject, I wanted to ask you, Mabel, if you think there is like maybe one point that we should put in the center of Beijing plus 30, maybe one action that we could push together, something that we could do, because I've been listening and I'm really agreeing that we are doing so many work, but we have the difficulty to work together. we have different agendas, but feminists have this power. So I don't know, maybe if you could give us like one idea of what we can do together towards Beijing plus 2030. Thank you.
I think, first of all, we need to start saying to people that Beijing was not only for the women and girls. This is the first point, because usually they say, well, it's for you. And they were, no, it's for everybody. Feminists wants to be all of us include and in the same level. So this is something that we need to start saying, and not only saying, practicing. This is the other point. And I think this maybe is the more difficult. So I think this is for the young women. I don't know where is she now. No, and the other one that because, we need to start saying, please, we are all the same and all we have the same rights. We have different approach, yes. We have difference. We are not all the same among the women, among the men, among the non-binary people, and so on. But we need to respect each other and promote this. This, I think, is the most important issue, to allow the people to understand that Beijing is not for women and girls. Please, this is, and we need to make, and of course, it's very interesting that when we organize the meetings at country level in local places, invite them. Invite and say, please come, because it's not for the women alone. And I must say that sometimes as we push so much, maybe we are not taking care to include them. That's why I'm asking that we need to include them. We need to include everybody, and we need to make them understand this is for everybody. That's why it's important, uh, uh, Beijing. And I must say that we have also these gender equality action coalitions. They are not perfect, you know. If you don't know, we can let you know later how you could find. But in those, the issue is not the papers we are written here and discussing that word or the other. It's really things that happen for the people. And this is where we need also to make some differences. And this is very important. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Let me pass on to our two speakers. Thank you for joining. And you will be our last person to take a seat in this section. I'm very sorry to close off. Thank you. Take the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gail Smith. I'm from Oxfam, South Africa. And it's great to be in a feminist section. It's always session. It's always wonderful to be in conversation with other feminists. I just have a couple of comments that come from some of the things people have said previously, just to speak about the fact that we are really in an era of backlash, and we really, really have to be vigilant, because while it's wonderful to see so many young, fiery feminists, we also have to be very protective of feminist spaces, because the thing that patriarchy does well is to divide us. And I think in the last 10 years, one has seen so many amazing feminist spaces where they have been invaded really by patriarchal women who are really just there to do the work of dismantling the work that feminists have done before. And to speak to the issue of Beijing plus 30, I mean, that coincided with the dawn of democracy in South Africa, and there was so much optimism. And it's absolutely devastating to see 30 years later. We recently had a session with our Department of Treasury and our Ministry of Women, of all things, to discuss gender budgeting. And there was the acknowledgement that senior public officials don't understand gender. I mean, 30 years later. So I think it also speaks to the importance of shrinking civic spaces and the desperate need for feminist education, because while Beyonce has made feminism really fashionable, we really have to be careful that we don't fall for this kind of really shallow kind of feminism, which does nothing for women. So I just wanted to speak to that issue. And then also the fact that we are also sitting in a space, not just a time of shrinking civic spaces, but also defunding of gender programs and the closure of really important feminist funds, which have sustained feminism in the last year, sort of 5 to 10 years, but a lot of those funds are now closing. And we really, really need to be vigilant and try to support feminist funds and get them back on the ground so that we don't end up with this kind of empty, shallow feminism that really takes us back. So yeah, those are my contributions.
Thank you. And we'll be discussing feminist funding for sure also in our third session today. So I'll invite you back then. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jahek Bilgi, and I'm from India, and I work with different NGOs and UN entities to make impact films. And I've worked a lot with women and women farmers back in India and have documented their work. So most of the things that you just mentioned, I wanted to highlight some of those things. There was this one thing that I've understood is the basic education of understanding about what gender equality is, right? So a lot of people don't understand what it really means. And if you go and work with any grassroots women in India, especially in India that I could talk about, they don't know what is happening here. They don't know that we are sitting in these rooms and talking about them for them, right? So I personally feel that it's very important to kind of incorporate them in some way, that a grassroots person, a, people who are working on grassroots level would actually come and say the actual things that they want to represent, right? Rather than somebody else coming and talking about it, because the impact is going to be way more if they themselves are coming. But the fight to get a platform for them, for the funds and everything, has been a very big challenge. And then also the inclusion of education in this whole system, that what is gender equality. But I attended a session during the action days by UN Women, and there was a beautiful line that stuck in my head, is like that we are not asking men, we're not against men, we want them to be our strong allies. And this is something that very beautifully came out, that I have never heard this phrased so nicely, that we don't want to fight against them or say that, but we want them as strong allies. So yeah, these were the two things that I personally felt that is there. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And my name is Nuru, and I'm a Tanzanian, and I work as GCAP regional coordinator. Mine is on feminism in technology and digital spaces. All of us knows that currently, the world is already in technology and everything is in digital spaces. And with the emergence of artificial intelligence, I feel like women are left behind, especially in the least developed countries. And this is because most of the women and young girls, they have no access to those spaces. And those who have access to those spaces are used either to undermine them, or there is an ongoing gender violence, cyberbullying online, which is distracting every effort a woman is struggling to do. And that is a very big challenge. I feel a sense of responsibility we as young women should work on. And we see our mothers have done a lot from the Beijing to now. They have achieved a lot. And for us now, with the emergence technology, then we have to change that. So if we look to, for instance, in technology workforce, globally, women are only 25%. So 75% are men, and we are here. We have to grab those opportunities and make it change. Nobody's going to do it. It's us as women. But also, I see also in the digital literacy, women kindly we are behind, and this is leading to mistrust. Actually, people don't trust if women can do tech. I will give you my own story. I am also in the coordination team of all of these events, and my background, I'm a lawyer, and my responsibility was to do tech. So I was trained by single days and have to do everything. So I was not aware of the PA system. I have to to do a hybrid meeting, but I have received comments. Can you really do this? They said, yeah, as a woman, can you do this? So those people who, you know, those are the feedback from the people who, you know, they are advocating for equalities. You know, we are here, you know, at the UN. So imagine someone who is not aware of the feminism movement, human rights, you know, equalities. You can imagine how the problem is big. So we need to do a lot, and I think women have to do a lot in technology and digital spaces. And if we're not, that means we, you know, the gap is being widened. Maybe we can go back to 40 years back, because everything is being transformed in digital now. But then coming to the issues of violence, currently the gender-based violence has shifted from physical violence to online violence. I see body shaming online. There we see you are very active advocating for something, and then they post your naked pictures online, and then they start, you know, body shaming and, you know, bullying you. We have seen it to our member of the MPs who have been advocating for feminism movement, for child rights, and that have been distracting them completely. You know, you find the picture of your mother being naked online in Twitter, can be in Instagram. So that is something all of us, we should take action to as we are moving forward to the Pact of the Future, to everything which we are doing to make sure that we are dividing this gap, and everything should be inclusive, and the women are also human beings, and the feminism movement should continue. Thank you.
Yeah.
I must say that in Beijing, we have no networks, social networks. We use faxes. Can you imagine you? But we did a lot. And coming back to what you say, one of our most important role was to bring those words here to the reality to our women and say, listen, this is what our government proposed there. We need to claim, to push for that. So this is something that is our role, to be a nexus, because of course, not all women, all girls are going to be able. And in this, I think a very good alliance is the alliance with the media persons. So I think this is a very good alliance, but also we need your intergenerational must be to learn us how to mobilize with the new technology, and us, we need to let you know how to take care in the abuses, and consider that this intelligence now is built by men and not by women. We need to put the women there and our knowledge there. That's our role also now.
Thank you so much. I will close this session there. Thank you very much. Give them a big hand. Thank you, dear Mabel. We need one for the second part of the session. The microphone. You can also. So our next session will focus on 2 other processes that are really, really crucial, that us feminists are also engaged with and focused on, which is the UNFCCC, the COP, so the climate conference that's upcoming in Baku, as well as the CBD, the conference on biodiversity, that's also happening next month. So I would very much like to welcome to the stage 2 of our other pod starters here today. So dear Trupti, she's the founder director of Narita Services. Give her big hands. And I'd also already like to ask of Carmen Capriles from Reaction Climatica. You've already seen her in the other panel before. Thank you for joining. Great. And perhaps since you're here, I would love to start the discussion on the importance of climate technology. I also know this is a big topic for Trupti. Can you reflect on why the upcoming climate conference and also technology in terms of feminism and climate, why that link is so crucial and why that is something that we need to be focusing on at the next climate conference as well?
Yeah, I think it is very crucial, as I said, currently, 30 years ago, the mobilization and everything was more physical, but currently the campaign, mobilization, even if we want to influence the education, and if we go to the literacy, the women literacy is still low, especially on issues of climate action, justice, and everything. And technology is very crucial in raising awareness, and we will need that. And women should be in those spaces. If they are not in those spaces, and all of us know that the impact is more on women than men when it comes to climate action. Yesterday we had a session on climate change, and all of us we see flooding in Europe, in Africa. We have seen a lot of those issues, and we see women struggling with their children. Women being homeless, children being homeless, and women are in a good position to take action. To take action against climate action, but also they are in a good position also to know how to go around when these issues happen, and we really need them in those spaces, and also they are good advocates of the actions, and also transferring the knowledge they have to the kids and future generations. So I think we need those spaces, and women, if they will not be included in the upcoming COP28, we also feel like we are not solving everything, because we see women as a central, we are the change makers, so we need those spaces and the COP29.
Thank you. I'm one of these women taking the space at a couple of climate conferences where we met. Dear Trupti, the floor is yours.
Yes, the technology and the gender is a very, very important issues, because we know that to achieve the 1.5 degree goal, how technology is important. But somehow there is a myth that the women cannot do much in the technology aspects, and the gender and technology can go together. And here we need to make the difference. We need to make aware them, and we need to highlight the efforts we really done by the grassroots women's in the technology sectors. For example, my Bungru technology is led by the women farmers, and is evolved by the women farmers, and now it is not only they are working effectively, but they are maintaining it and now scaling up on the large scales, which helps the farmers to get rid from the flood and drought situations. Both they are injecting the excess water in the droughts, so that land get water free, and access the water for the irrigation. So this kind of the similar adaptive technology has a lots of future, and that's we need to highlight that women promoted community led technology should have the right kind of the platform in the climate summit. So we know that we have the very less participations in the still the women after the Beijing conference, also because only the gender and environmental data says that only 35% women are participating in the negotiations in the last COP. So you can understand that still we have the long way to achieve. And out of that 35%, how many is working on technology aspects, and especially the climate technology? So you know that the result is very, very less. And for example, some issues are very related to the women, which, for example, water. So water is very close heart to the women, because they have to work on day-to-day life with the water. But in the overall climate change, there is no much emphasis given on the water sectors. Here, I just heard about 300 side events, only 4 events is on water. So it is I mean very, very under estimated, because nobody is in, and without the blue there is no green. So you can understand what is the importance of the water in the climate change. And still we are talking about the carbons and other equations, but not giving emphasis on the these aspects, which is very close to women. And that's why if you're not focusing on this kind of the water technology aspects, we cannot bridging the gender gap, not only at the grassroots level, but at the macro level. Thank you.
Thank you. And a specific question for Carmen. So you followed sure. The biodiversity COP. So we know that there's a triple planetary crisis. We have climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Why is that a feminist issue?
Well, it's a feminist issue because women, most of the time, they're the right holders of the benefits of biodiversity. And sometimes we give that either for granted or we don't pay enough attention to it. We know that there has been a close relationship between women and seeds, for example. Probably women were the ones that started agriculture, but of course that's not really in the records. But every battle, I think, in history has been recorded and everything. So women has been invisibilized, sorry, all this time. Everything that they have been given in the case of technology, in the case of like helping domesticate animals, domesticate plants, and we give that for granted. We don't know the story. We just know that now we live with animals, plants, who for feeding, and kind of like that's it. And what's the story behind it? It has a lot to do with the relationship of women that could not be like hunters or gatherers, that kind of like stay and develop agriculture. And so those things we don't know. And that's why it's important that from now on, we start visualizing the role that women have in all these developments, because it is important to acknowledge them as right holders. And as someone was saying, still around the world, women have a hard time owning the earth. Or owning the land, not the earth, the land. And that's a big problem because they are the ones that are producing. Men tend to migrate to big cities. Women are left behind in communities producing, and they don't have all the means or technology or access. So they have to use whatever they can to. And that's why it's also important that the convention recognizes this relationship, because unfortunately, biodiversity is being cut down to just genes and have the genomes and be able to patent those genes and to make money from those genes and from those. And we're forgetting about the bigger picture, which is not only ecosystems, but the whole planet. And I think we have to focus on that. And I think most of the women that are involved in the CDB, in biodiversity, in conservation, are very aware of this and are pushing for seeing the big picture, seeing the planet, and not only whatever can be mercantilized. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I see a hand back there. You're always free to come up. If there's an empty chair, please join us.
Can I talk while she's coming?
Sorry? Oh. Carmen, would you be so kind then to interpret?
Sure.
Muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Esther Cama, yo soy indígena quechua, pero trabajando desde Costa Rica y formo parte del Enlace Continental de Mujeres Indígenas.
Un ratito. Well, she's Esther Cama. She's Quechua, and she's living in Costa Rica, and she comes from the network of indigenous.
Enlace de Mujeres Indígenas
The link
de las Américas.
Of Indigenous Women of Americas.
Personalmente, doy seguimiento al proceso del CBD.
I follow up the CDB.
Desde la COP3.
From since COP3 of the
CDB. Y hemos avanzado mucho en las decisiones.
And we have moved forward a lot in the decisions.
Como indígenas.
Like indigenous.
El artículo 8J.
The article 8J.
tiene que ver con conocimientos tradicionales y hemos hecho una lucha y hemos tenido un programa de trabajo en el CBD.
The article 8J has to do with ancestral knowledge, and they have been like advocating to have this within the recognition of their knowledge within the CDB.
También hemos abierto un proceso de trabajo con las mujeres.
We have also opened a work stream with women.
Actualmente el CBD tiene un plan de trabajo de género.
Right now, CDB has a gender action plan.
Y tiene un personal dentro del CBD para atender temas de género.
And it has higher personnel within the CDB that follows gender issues.
De la misma manera, en la COP20 en Lima, se hizo el plan de trabajo de género dentro de la Convención Marco de Cambio Climático.
In the same way, in Lima, in COP20, the Gender Action Plan for the UNFCCC was introduced.
Para mí el desafío grande es si los gobiernos están cumpliendo esas decisiones.
For me, the big challenge is to see if governments are applying those decisions, are putting in practice.
Y si uno hace una revisión de los informes que hacen los gobiernos, no lo están cumpliendo.
And if we review what governments are doing, they are not being compliant with these decisions.
Y para mí el desafío desde el punto de vista de las mujeres en la COP16 es precisamente plantear esto, las incoherencias que tienen los gobiernos en cumplir sus compromisos.
So for her, the big challenge that we have in the CDB in COP16 is how we find governments accountable because they are not doing their part in implementing these policies and these commitments.
Solamente voy a mencionar, por ejemplo, se comprometieron para detener la pérdida de biodiversidad, dijeron, se llamaba las metas de Aichi, y no han cumplido los gobiernos eso. Y ahora han creado un marco que se llama Kunming-Montreal para detener la pérdida de cambio climático. Estamos a 3 años, 4 años de haberse dado ese plan y creo que tenemos que revisar de qué manera los estados deben cumplir esos compromisos.
So just to give you an example, governments committed to put in practice the Aichi framework, the Aichi goals, and in a decade they did nothing. So now we have a new global agreement, which is Kunming-Montreal, and it's been a couple of years and we don't see any progress from governments.
Termino solamente diciendo, yo deseo voces de mujeres muy fuertes. Estamos aquí en esta cumbre del futuro y las voces de las mujeres no están fuertes. No nos han dejado participar como quisiéramos. Somos más de la mitad de mujeres en el mundo y necesitamos que las mujeres tomen esos espacios, no solamente de toma de decisiones, sino de soñar el futuro. Como indígena, yo sueño 2 cosas. 1, justicia económica y trabajar la economía, y en eso estamos, trabajar una propuesta de economía en equilibrio que cuide la vida. Gracias.
So what she's saying is that she hopes that in the spaces, in the COPs, CDB and UNFCCC, the voices of women are really loud and can be heard, because we're seeing that in the Summit of the Future, the voices of women are almost not allowed, and they are very, very shy and very small. So let's hope that in the other spaces, we can really make our voices be heard, because she wants more fair economical systems, and she just doesn't want economical rights, but also the chance to dream of a greener future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for the impromptu translation for us here upstage. That's really fantastic. And thank you so much for bringing up the link between the CBD Gender Plan of Action and the Gender Action Plan of the UNFCCC. And I would love to also invite, there's an empty chair here next to me. Don't be scared, please make use of it. Particularly also to discuss the Gender Action Plan, because of course there are negotiations that are going to happen during COP29 on the Lima Work Program on Gender and its Gender Action Plan. So is there anybody else here in the room that is by any chance following this process who can share a little bit more about why feminists need to be focused on this? Yes, I see a hand.
Yes.
Oh, you can take a seat.
Yes, as a feminist and grassroots woman leader, my name is Dr. Lemota, and from the Center for Sustainable Development, a member of the Wairo Commission, leading in partner with UNFCCC. Wairo Commission is a grassroots women's movement based in New York. We are looking at gender justice as feminists. Feminism is about justice, but the role of women feminists is to look at the climatic action, resilient actions, contributions of women from the community in climate adaptation. Right now, we are working on culturalization of green rice initiatives towards climate mitigation. We are, as feminists, we are harvesting knowledge of community best practices in terms of climate resilience, risk management. Therefore, we are saying as feminist group that issues of gender justice in terms of contribution, compensation need to be looked at in climate study and climate action. For example, when flood came in any community, in our communities, flooding is now a challenge in Nigeria, and most African countries are flooded. Even my village was flooded yesterday. And the women are bearing the body of flood. One, diseases has taken over. They became IDP, refugees. They are homeless, shelterless, foodless, livelihood, liberties are eroded. So I'm speaking the language of grassroots feminist group. We are working with Global Fund for Women for 2 years, looking at how can we harvest in knowledge of grassroots feminist movement in terms of contribution to climate action. And we are saying that documentation of success stories, impact mitigation of the women in communities in terms of climate adaptation should be documented and be invested in. One, in women's livelihood, tree planting. And we are not talking of just planting trees. We are talking of planting cash crops. Cash crops economy. The people of the past generations planted the forest. What are we planting? Also, cooking gas. The women cannot afford money to buy gas and electricity. And then we ask them to stop cutting the trees. What is the alternative? Are we using to support the cooking technology of the local women who cannot buy petrol, gas, and energy? So these are some of the climatic issues that we as feminists need to look at in terms of economic support, innovations, renovations, integration, and harvesting the best practices of women at the community levels on impact mitigation. Then my question to COP, the last COP 28 was very discriminative in terms of stakeholders' engagement. They're asking for so much questions that most civil society, grassroots people cannot participate. There's what they call blue line, red line, green line, and we want to participate. The donors are ready to send us to the meeting. But the women are saying, no, the blue line is closed, the red line is open, you have to be part of the government delegations. And the government doesn't want to take you because they don't want you to come there and tell them our stories. So we want to go on our own platform as civil society, community actors who are bringing the real reality to the table on climate adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very crucial topic, also meaningful engagement in these processes. So I see a hand back there. Would you like to join us? And I see another here. There are 2 seats, so very welcome to join. And please introduce yourselves.
Thank you. My name is Martina Kabisama from Tanzania. I represent women in feminists in the GCAP Global Council. And I also, my organization hosts the GCAP in Tanzania. My point is, it's just like a follow-up from what Professor has said, is in economic justice, focusing the climate justice. My point is, when we are talking about women or people stop cutting trees so that they can use the clean energy, which she has already said that the clean energy is very expensive. When we are talking about this, we are not balancing. I just think about back home in this way. You come to Dar es Salaam, where is a big city. You find a lot of motorbikes coming from the out of the city with charcoal. And the way they are driving, I can't even tell you how it is, because the bag is very big and they use the motorbike. And the way they sit is very dangerous. They can even cause accidents in the roads. But that's not my point. It's just quarter-way point. My point is, these people who are selling charcoal, it doesn't mean that they don't like forest. They love forest, but they are forced to cut charcoal so that they can sell and get money, pay for their kids' school fees, and use for bread to live. You ask them to stop cutting trees. What an alternative of earning something for their lives are you giving to them? So we are thinking, we are very kind to the climate justice, but what an alternative? Because when you say alternative is a clean energy, to me it's not really appealing 100%, because when you say that they should stop, even myself, I like seeing a green vegetation, but you ask them stop, where do you want them to get money for their kids' school fees? And where do you want them to get something so that they can get bread? Because if you ask them to do farming, again, farming is not yielding as it used to be. Now they plant, you can't predict the rain, whether it can come enough or more than enough. So to me, life is complicated. The way I see it, we still have something to do. We have to sit down, use our brain, and think critically. If we are saying people should do this, we should have something as an alternative so that life can continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. And you'll be our last extra speaker before I give the floor for final interventions.
Thank you very much. For me, the conversation, there's 3 points I want to make. Firstly, the conversation about climate cannot happen without the conversation about the care economy. Because a lot of women, in terms of small-scale farming, in terms of looking after families, in terms of suffering from just the very first impacts of climate, whether it's flooding or drought, is the fact that they are left in the homes to look after children, to look after the sick, and that labor is not recognized. So I think for me, having these conversations in silos is a problem, because we need to understand first and foremost, where are women in the whole economical or the structure of the economy and the hierarchy. There are opportunities with the just transition, but unfortunately the language and the people who sit around the table basically exclude women, because largely women's labor is seen as labor that is not important. And one of the things that I think we would need to do as we speak about just transition is to actually even keep a scorecard for our own governments around how many women are sitting and are really part of the conversation about the just transition. To give you an example, in South Africa, women started with picking up plastic waste to earn a living. But one of the things that we have done, and it took many years, I admit, was to create a company for them, so that we disrupt value chains around recycling and make sure that they own the means for the business. I think one of the things that we need to do is to make sure, how do we take some of the conversations, particularly about rural women, about women from the global majority, from the periphery. Because the other thing that we are talking about clean energy is that there is also going to be mining and extractives. And are we thinking about how is that going to affect the very communities where women are? So there are key demands for me that I think we need to have. One is recognition of care work as work, and as a contribution to, the GDP. I mean, I think if women stopped contributing their labor, many economies would not run.
Everything would stop.
Everything would stop. But I also think that as the conversations around just transition are happening, we need to ask ourselves, where are the women in shaping how that just transition is going to happen? And the third last point is, we need to probably look at how, because the reality is not many women are going to be part of these conversations, where is the support and the funding to make sure that even in the most rural village, people understand what is COP, understand what their voice is, and we raise the voices and collect as many voices as possible of people who are mostly affected by climate change. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, round of applause, please. Yeah. Maybe I would ask Trupti and Carmen for last interaction, and maybe a reaction to the third point that you made. How do we ensure that feminists are part of that discussion? How do we get people to know why these processes that look so high over actually affect their reality on the ground?
Yeah. I think this is very important. I think everyone is talking about that, how we translate actually the macro policies at the micro level. And that's, I just giving you the example of how we have done this once. We have collect the women, and because they have not the recognitions of what their knowledge about agriculture or maybe anything, and they don't have the economic says, because when the farmers are selling the crops, they don't have the any kind of the economic share from them. So basically we have tried to solve these problems by giving the water rights to them, because in my case, my area is there is no water, there is no green, I mean, so there is no cultivation. So by our Bhongru innovations, we have given a group of the women farmers, translated their rights to the women farmers, so that they have empowered a lot. I mean, they not just understand the technology, they maintained it, and now they are scaling up. So that's they are calling them as a climate leaders. So through this, by giving the water rights to them, they have changed their economic status at the household level. because now they have the economic say, because without the water, there is no income generations. So indirectly, they have the says in the economic part. But most importantly, we are trying to that income has been increased 300% after having this innovation bungro. But for them, and this innovation is for the dignity, because earlier now they were the laborers, now they are the farmers. And second, now and their work has been recognized, that is more important. So now we are running our climate leaders program, in which mainly women and youth are involving, and provide them the dignified lives, and turning them into micro entrepreneurs. And we are updating them every aspects of the macro level policies, sharing them the award and everything to them, and now they are aware about what is happening, and now they are the key stakeholders in terms of the policy advocacy, at least at the state and national levels. So I think this is the gradual process, but through the awareness, capacity building, networking, and partnerships will help us to take us the real results in terms of the feminist area. And I think here is also we are forget to mention about the CCD, that the disaster climate disaster conferences, and in which my women are in the next and they are I'm sharing to their work, and they've been selected as a leaders to participate in this conference. So this is the all the way they have achieved their results, and show the way to the world how we can go further in terms of the sustainable development.
Thank you. And a final minute for you, Carmen. We're running a bit short on time.
Yes. Well, in 2010, I mean, 14 years ago, if you would say that climate change had a differentiated impact, nobody would believe you. So I remember I did a study on perceptions about around climate change, and since then, all the data has shown that there is a differentiated impact. And right now, everybody that's like within UNCCC or the CDB or environmental issues understands that environmental problems have a disproportionate impact men from women. And I would like to talk a lot more about it, but in the case of like the conventions, it has led to having the gender action plans, which are very important. And yes, we have to find our countries accountable for that. And I would like to talk a little bit more about energy, but I don't think I have the time, but thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. Big round of applause. Thank you. We are going to the last conversation of this session. We have a bit shorter time for that, but I didn't want to interrupt these great discussions that also tap into a lot of what we were going to be discussing in this session anyway. I would like to ask me to join. Zonizuo, please have a seat. We're going to be discussing financing for development, which of course we had a session on earlier today already, which also had some really critical feminist analysis already packed in that session. And we'll also be looking at the SDGs because, as we know, only 17% of them are currently on track, which is quite a depressing statistic for you all there at the end of this day. And what I would like this session to focus on is, yes, these processes, but perhaps even more so, what would we like to see happen in terms of feminist financing? What does that look like? Can we envision that with each other? So that's basically my first question for you. Feminist financing, what does that look like?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, feminist financing is all about justice. This is not charity. This is about our rights. It's we deserve it. We deserve that investment, and it's about our lives. And when we talk about feminist financing, for me, I see investment in terms of access to services. I see investment in decent work in terms of proper pay. I see investment in infrastructure. I see investment in terms of health. I see a holistic and a comprehensive, deliberate intention to make people's lives better. that is what I see as feminist financing. Yeah.
Clear, very, very clear. Anybody that wants to join this conversation that we're having?
Yeah, and we know for years there've been discussion around financing. You know, we've had conversations and we've had commitments, you know, being made. But every year, nobody is, in terms of those who make these commitments, are talking about why they are unable to keep to those commitments. But yet, there is, you know, that conversation, and we keep going wrong and wrong and wrong. And you know, I think it's time for us to start holding each other and calling the names and shaming them in terms of, you know, delaying to see that, you know, humans live their best life. Yeah.
Thank you. Please pass the mic. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as you say, we were having this conversation already a bit earlier, but I think it's a very crucial one because, well, in Mexico, but also I believe all over the world, we are seeing a backlash in financing because the most, well, for instance, in countries of the global south, as you want, as sometimes they're called, it's very clear that feminist organization will not have a fund from local government. It's almost impossible. So the option has been always international cooperation, and the most progressive cooperation agency have been well, getting away the funds. They were mentioning my colleagues a while ago, but also like those governments who are turning right, they are taking away finance from a peace initiative, and women are one of the a crucial part of peace building. So I think it's an important conversation to have now to see how we can really advocate together to put this issue in the agenda, because for the work it's so important to finance the organization. It's crucial. So well, yeah, I wanted to say that we are preoccupied because it's really it's a clear fact that the funds are getting away. There have never been so many, but now the most progressive government, like for instance, Germany or the Netherlands or Sweden, they are just taking all the funds away. No?
I think I have the right person to respond to that question too. So please
Thank
go
you
ahead.
very much. Well, I think feminist financing is about making sure that women have enough to do what they, someone said it, the care economy. We have to recognize the work of women, and that should be financed, and it should be clearly ring-fenced in social protection financing. So feminist financing is social protection investment, and the women should demand it, and they don't. We don't. You know, we look after the old people. I'm an older person. I look after older people. Older people can also look after me. We look after the children. In Spain, when the women went on strike, the grannies, the whole place fell apart. You mentioned that. Let's recognize our strength, but demand the financing. And I wanted to ask as well, what's the connection between this and the World Social Summit, which we talked about earlier today? Can we take these specific demands into the World Social Summit? Let's not hold back, because we won't get it here. The SDGs are sort of, yeah, it's all there, but we don't demand. We are not raising our voice to say this is what is ours. And our governments should be doing it because we voted them in. Even if we didn't vote them in, they should still do it because our So I think we should feel our strength as women of all ages and ensure that the care economy is given enough support. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes, please do come up. And another person. Does anybody want to switch? Yes, great. I love how this organically gets about. And then these will be the final people that are going to take a seat today. Oh, I'm very sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm Anita Thomas. I chair the NGO Committee on Financing for Development in New York. So this conversation is very close to our heart. And the importance of ensuring that feminist financing, gender financing really plays a central role rather than I keep hearing it being repeated as a cross-cutting issue. It's not a cross-cutting issue. It's absolutely important that financing get to women on the ground and rooted in the right to development perspective, which is again another cross-cutting issue is what I keep hearing being discussed. So in this landscape, when financing is so fractured, there's such a fractured mechanism of financing, many of the developing countries are really using their scarce resources to pay back the loans and the credit that they have taken, right? And so, and instead of putting that money into social protection, ensuring, public goods are financed equitably, inclusively. So in such a scenario, what is it that we can do as feminist organizations, as women's rights organizations? What is it that we can do to come collectively, really advocate with member states? And if you look at the co-facilitators of the financing for development, there are several governments that will listen to you, that have a very strong gender focus. So we really need to be talking to those governments to make sure the language actually gets in, right? And right now is the right time to begin it because, there's an elements paper, there's a call for an elements paper out there. Write to it, make a response to it, really take a look at it closely. And so what are the they're not asking for you to share the challenges. We really have to give them recommendations, concrete recommendations based on what you're hearing from the ground, right? Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for, maybe this is an invitation to talk about some of these sort of concrete recommendations. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm Mojisola from Nigeria. I'm looking at feminist financing in a different way. And okay, so it's a double sword head somehow to us in Global South. It's another thing to say you want to finance feminism and you come and negotiate with so many things that will even affect us more, especially at the grassroots level. So I think as civil society organization, we have to look inward and change the tone and change our advocacy strategies to see where is the money is and where we can tailor our advocacy in without damaging the future. For example, we say, okay, we want to get some money from international corporations. Well, they will come and take some natural resources from your country that will even damage more and affect women. So it's a thing that we look at it that it's something we need, but then can't we look inward and check our own philanthropies and look at what are the things that are making money for us and look inward and make sure that we can get that financing from our home climb. So it's not about, it's our right, but then social protection should be something that's supposed to be domiciled with the context of that country without damaging them. So I think we are on the course in Nigeria to believe that there is no free launch anywhere. When they are coming with that finance, a lot of states in Nigeria are in debt with World Bank, IMF, a lot of loans are there that is affecting us, greatly for us to move forward in terms of development. So we are tired of that. So let us look inward. There's a lot of people making money in tech now. How can tech support feminism, without hurting us so much? How can we move into places that we have not touched before without hurting us so much? So that is it from the Global South. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we have our final speaker. Sorry to cut you short. You have about 1 minute, otherwise the organizers will
Okay, I'll try to be very fast. So my take is feminist financing the same as engendered budgets. to say that allocating resources to those needs of women that are peculiar to, you know, to the woman. So when you say feminist financing, we need to, I want to understand what that really means. The second thing is when budgets are made and are not sitting at the table where those decisions are made, definitely the men will take decisions based on what they think. So we need to make sure that we're sitting at the table when they're making decisions about what to spend on women. That's really important. Otherwise, they'll just be tokenistic ideas, like saying they're sharing 10,000 naira for, you know, women entrepreneurs, or they're sharing trees. Women should go and plant trees, or, you know. So we need to sit at the table where these decisions that concerns women are being made, and that still goes to say we need to be involved in politics. Women shy away from politics. I hope I've not taken too much of your time.
No, thank you so much. I'll have a final mini remark from our guest speaker. So, yeah. One final thoughts to end this session on. I know that's a tough one.
Yeah, let's keep the momentum. We should never stop.
I love that.
Yeah, we should never stop. Let's keep the
Let's
momentum
keep it there.
until we get what we want. You know, like, you know, climate justice, what do we want? Climate justice, when do we want it? Now. And if we don't get it, shut them down. So we should never stop until we get
Super.
it. Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining this conversation. And just a final note from my end that I have very, very much enjoyed talking to all of you. And I hope that you felt welcome in the space. And thank you for making it such a safe space and a brave space as well to share your thoughts. So thank you very much, and on to the rest.
Thank you so much. Our final session of the day will start in about 30 minutes. It's on peace, peace building and multilateral strategies towards peace. So I would appreciate it if you all stuck around. And also we have some, there's some posters that have been made over here. I don't know if you can all see them. So I would encourage you to make some as well before our solidarity action at 6:30. Thank you.